All right, take it away, Linda.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Bonjour. My name is Linda Black Elk. I'm the Food Sovereignty Coordinator here at United Tribes Technical College, which is the tribal college up here in Bismarck, North Dakota. I'm on the traditional homelands of the Oceti Sakowin, and this is also the traditional homelands of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara peoples. And I'm so honored and happy to be here with you guys today. In talking to Peyton, I was just talking about, what would be great for you all to hear about. And we came up with the idea of talking about plants, not just plants, but food and medicine for recovery. And just to give you a little bit of background, I have a lot of adopted siblings, but I have two biological siblings, and they're both older than me, but one of my brothers was in active addiction for about 16 or 17 years. And, I just remember the guy I grew up with, and about how when he was in active addiction, he was absolutely someone that I didn't recognize. And, his life completely changed, and the life of his family, his kids, and all of our lives, everyone around him, our lives changed as well. And he tried numerous times to get clean. He went to treatment many times. He went to jail many times. Sometimes he would go intentionally because he wanted to try to get clean. He lost his job, he lost his home, he lost vehicles, he lost everything. At one point he lost his kids. He tried and tried to get clean. And every time he would try with some sort of synthetic opiate, like methadone or Suboxone, which are wonderful medicines for so many people, and they greatly reduce harm. And that's really what we're going for, is harm reduction, right? But for him, they didn't work. They triggered him, and it wouldn't be enough. And so he would start using again. And so we had to come up with something else. We had to find a way. And so we turned to the plants. And what we found is that the plants are what really worked and still work. He still uses plant medicine. And now, as of now, he's been clean for about 6 or 7 years. So, and it's been, we got him clean with plant medicine, and we've been maintaining it. When he feels triggered, we go back to the plant medicines. We go back to the teas and things like that. And so I wanted to just share some of that with you guys today, not just for teas and things like that, but with food as well. So I'm just gonna start here at the beginning. And let me just go back for just 1 second. So when we're talking about food and medicine for recovery, there's a whole lot of different stages and things that we have tried. And one of the reasons that my brother started using in the first place was because he was in the military and he hurt himself when he was overseas, and he was in terrible pain. And what they gave him for the pain was an opiate. And at first he was just kind of using it, and everything seemed okay. But it very quickly got out of control, and he I don't know what the research is on it, but if you ask him, he would say that he has the personality that makes it so that just that little bit of opiate in the beginning is really triggered him into a life of addiction. So when we're talking about how we treat pain, and how we treat my brother's pain, because just because he has tried to get clean, it didn't go away. The pain didn't go away. Okay. So one of the things that we used to help treat his pain was willow bark. Willow bark is what aspirin is made from. So if you guys are familiar with aspirin, you know that Tylenol and aspirin are very similar. Tylenol and things like that originally came from aspirin, were derived from aspirin. And so this is one of the things that we use to help him treat his pain. Willow bark in a tea is fantastic for treating pain and inflammation and fever. And so it's something that we use a lot for him when we're talking about pain. It's probably the primary one that we use. And in fact, even myself, just so you guys know, I'm allergic to aspirin. I can't use store-bought aspirin. These days, aspirin is not made from plants. It is synthesized in a lab. It's made from a bunch of chemicals, and that's how they make aspirin. Originally, aspirin was derived from plants. So I can still use willow bark to treat pain, but I can't use synthesized aspirin. I'm allergic to it. So it's really wonderful for me as well. If we're talking, another plant that I use a lot for really everyone I know is stinging nettles. And in Ojibwe, this is called mazan, which means burnweed or itchweed. And if you've ever come across it, I don't know how many of you guys have come across this plant before, but I'd love to hear about your experience. If you look really closely, I have really bad eyesight right now, but if you look closely on these stems, do you guys see my little pointer there? And can you see those little hairs along the stem? Stinging nettles has a bunch of little hairs all along the stem and the bottoms of the leaves. And those, when you brush up against it, it actually will kind of irritate your skin. It'll burn your skin a little bit. And that sounds terrible, but I'm telling you, it only lasts about 10 or 15 minutes. So it's not like getting a poison ivy rash, which lasts months and months or something like that. This is just kind of a stinging or irritation that's very temporary. But here's the thing, you guys, stinging nettles is amazing for treating pain. The little hairs actually work a lot like little tiny hypodermic needles. And the medicine that's present on those hairs, when you take the fresh plant, like this one in the picture on the right, and you do this, you kind of do a whipping or a brushing treatment on any of your areas that are painful. So like if you were to come around here, you could see elders sitting on their front porch, whipping their hands with fresh nettles. And that's because if they have arthritis in their hands, the pain and inflammation will go away. And it only takes about 5 to 10 minutes for the swelling, the pain, and the inflammation to go away. I have seen practically like miracles happen because of this plant. One of my students, she had a terrible pinched nerve in her back, and the pain was so bad that they put her on opiates. And she actually has had experiences with addiction in the past. And so she was really upset, like, why would they put me on opiates when they know I'm an addict? You know, that's what she said. Instead of accepting the opiates from the physician, she started using plant medicine. And one day she took some fresh nettles home. The nettles, kind of like the way they look in the picture on the right when they're older like that. The picture on the left is the nettles when they're really young in the early spring. But when they're taller, like on the right, she went out and grabbed some of those. And that night she did that sort of, we call it a whipping treatment, but my husband says I have to quit calling it that because it doesn't sound nice. But she did a whipping treatment on her back where the pinched nerve was. And the next morning at like 7 o'clock in the morning, she posted on Facebook and she said, that was the first time I've had 8 hours of sleep in years. You know, she was like, I can't believe, like, this is the first pain-free moment I've had in years. And what happens is the nettles reduce the inflammation. So she had a nerve pinched between two vertebrae that were rubbing up against each other like this. And there was a nerve pinched in there. and it reduced the inflammation around those vertebrae and it released her nerve. And you guys, she's been pain-free ever since. That was like 13 years ago. Okay, amazing. And so even for my brother with his injured ankle that happened in the military, about 3 or 4 times in the summer when the nettles are fresh, he'll take them and he'll do that same whipping treatment on his ankle. And it is amazing how much that helps. Now, if it's the winter time and any of you here might be experiencing pain, you can actually take some of the willow bark I talked about a minute ago and take some of these nettles dried, and you can make tea out of them and still get tons of relief. It's not the same immediate kind of relief that you get from the whipping treatment, but it is fantastic. My uncle Les Ducheneau down on the Cheyenne River Reservation, he has terrible rheumatoid arthritis, and he uses nettles exclusively in a tea. He drinks 3 or 4 cups of nettles every single day. Even now, it's been, I feel like it's been like 7 or 8 years. No, it was before, it's been about 9 years that he's been using it every day to maintain his rheumatoid arthritis. He was able to get off of his Enbrel, which is a prescription medication for RA, by using nettles. So this is such an amazing, amazing medicine. And I think it's one that we avoid, you know, like we're like, oh, Mazan, like, why am I going to touch myself with that? Right. You know, that's itchweed, that's burnweed. But the fact is, this is a fantastic medicine, and you can actually eat it as well, you guys. So when it looks like this, like on the left here, the younger nettles, they're really tender and you can eat them just like spinach. But you have to cook them first. With any cooking, all the stinging effect goes away. So when you make a tea or when you cook them, there's no more stinging. So you don't have to worry about that. And we love to put those fresh nettles, those young nettles, in soup. We make pesto out of it. Have you guys ever heard of pesto? It's kind of like a green pasta sauce. Delicious. If you Google nettle pesto, you'll come up, there's like 5,000 nettle pesto recipes online. But it's a wonderful edible and medicinal plant. And I wanted to say that if you have any questions while we're talking, feel free to put them in the chat as we're going along, and I'll try to get to them as we're going along. Because I know sometimes if you wait till we get to the end, it kind of loses its momentum and you don't want to ask anymore. But definitely either ask while we're going or save them up. It's up to you.
Speaking of that, Linda, I don't know if you mentioned it. Where do people harvest these, or where would you find them?
Great question. So nettles grow all over up by Boys Fort. I've actually found them near there before. And they grow, nettles are one of those plants that are kind of like a dandelion, you know, you kind of find them everywhere. But as you can see from the pictures, they're not really noticeable. They just look like any other green plant, right? So it's important to try to learn what they look like. And I mostly find them growing in shady spots underneath trees. And they love really moist, rich soil. But I have also found them on the side of the road. I've found them on the prairie, you know, so we get them out here a lot too.
Any idea why my dog would be licking stinging nettles the other day?
You know, I have seen that before, okay? And it's wild. I'm not sure why, unless like it's kind of like there's a paper that the park rangers in Yellowstone National Park, they wrote a paper about how they noticed over the years that when buffalo get sick, they will eat certain plants, like echinacea, purple coneflower, and other plants. And I think animals know medicine, you know, when they see it. So maybe your dog has some arthritis or some pain that he's trying to deal with. I've heard it many times that you know, of animals, even cats, eating nettles.
I have a question. So
Please.
is there a certain time that you should pick these? And I've been having migraines lately. I know this is for pain, but would this be something I could use? And even if I use this, it would be, you just put it in like a tea, right?
Yep, great questions. So when to harvest? If you're gonna use nettles internally, that means if you're gonna eat them or drink them, okay? Then you wanna get them at this stage in the early spring. So up where you guys are, that would be like April and May, usually, okay? When they're young like this, like in the picture on the left, okay? Then they'll grow up and they'll get these weird looking light green flowers on them, okay? This is when I like to use them for the stinging treatment. Now, let's say you forgot to harvest your nettles in April and May, and it's like July and you're in a lot of pain and you have a migraine or you have some arthritis that's bothering you, you can still go out and get nettles to make tea. But watch the screen here. You only want to get the leaves up at the top here, if that happens. The young, tender leaves is what you're going for. These older leaves down at the bottom, they get high in silica. Silica is a compound that's kind of hard on your kidneys. So if you're going to use them for tea or for food, you want to get the young leaves up at the top, or you want to get them like early in the year in April or May. And you know, even sometimes I found them in northern Minnesota in like the end of March. So they get around pretty early. They'll start sprouting up pretty early. And yes, I love them as a tea, but remember, if you use them in food, they are just as medicinal in food as they are as a tea. Okay. Okay.
One more question.
Okay. Yep.
So is this like taking an aspirin, like you take an aspirin, like 30 minutes later, you'll start feeling something like, so, or is this like, you have to do it consistently for a couple days?
And even more so with plant medicine, traditional medicine is gentle, right? Aspirin and other pills. It's one of the reasons why opiates and other things are so addictive. They are super tons and tons of medicine in a teeny tiny package. And it's like a shock to your body. That's why they work so quickly, is because it's like, it's a shock to your body. But the fact is you can like drink 3 or 4 cups of nettle tea every day. It's not a problem, as long as you're using those younger leaves. And so yeah, now I meant to address your migraines directly, because that is a terrible issue to deal with. The willow bark and the nettles are great together for migraines, but you should contact me on Facebook or something too. Just send me a message, because I have a whole migraine protocol of herbs. Like, if this doesn't work, try this. And then if this doesn't work, try this. And then you can add this. So feel free to send me a message too.
Yay, the new friend for my Facebook.
That's great. And then I got a question about, like, you know, harvesting plants off the side of the road. And I should address that really quickly before we go on. I wanted to say that, yes, cars and like all the salt that gets put on roads, and you know, if you live along a gravel road, all the dust from the gravel, they absolutely will pollute the plants that are growing alongside of the road. I have harvested plants off the side of the road, but it's only off of like really remote roads, like out in the middle of nowhere, where like maybe 3 cars a day drive down that road. You want to be careful, because roadside ditches can be pretty polluted. But that said, let me say this real quick. My husband and we made a commitment a long time ago that a huge part of our diet would be traditional foods for the sake of our kids. I'm part Asian. My mom's Korean and Mongolian, and then my husband is from the Cheyenne River Reservation. And we made that commitment that we would like put our cultural foods, traditional foods, foraged foods out there for, and even hunting and all of that out there for our kids. And so like 60 to 70% of our diet is foraged. So that being said, we don't harvest from the side of the road, but when we're harvesting plants, we ask ourselves, is this plant dirtier than what we get in the grocery store. Okay, because the fact is, my husband harvested apples in an apple orchard when he was a teenager. That was his summer job, his fall job. And the guy who grew those apples sprayed them with 55 different herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides. The lettuce you get in the grocery store is sprayed with upwards of 33 different herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides. So if I find some like, you know, dandelion leaves growing in someone's yard and like maybe they sprayed 2 years ago, are those dirtier than what I'd get in the grocery store? No. So I'm going to pick those dandelion leaves. You can sure as heck bet that I trust those more. Okay. But I don't harvest off the side of the road. Okay. So there are other plants for treating pain, things that you can get in the grocery store. Okay. So those two plants, the willow bark and the nettles are wild, forageable plants that grow around you guys. But these are things, if you don't have time to get out there and forage, these are all things that you can find in the grocery store. We have cloves, we have turmeric, we have ginger root here, we have chili peppers, and we have garlic. Did you guys know that garlic and chilies are wonderful for treating pain? They are super anti-inflammatory. So if you're someone who has headaches, if you're someone who has a pulled muscle, if you have a bad back, if you have arthritis, you could actually make a soup and put all 5 of these plants in there. You know, cut up some ginger, put it in there. How many of you guys have had Vietnamese pho before? Pho or P-H-O? Delicious, right? It's so good. Yeah, yum. But all of these are in there. Pho is actually a medicinal soup. And originally, if you talk to people from Vietnam, it started off as a medicine. It started off as a way to get medicine. So you know, you can use it like that. Natasha actually has a great question. She asked, she put cloves in olive oil to infuse in there. And how long should she let it sit before sifting the clove out? So 2 things, you don't really have to sift it out, Natasha, if you don't want to. But if you do want to, because the cloves have such a strong flavor, I usually wait 3 to 5 weeks. Sometimes I'll wait even longer, just depending, you know, I mean, it just depends on how strong you want it. So I would advise tasting it and then deciding. So these are just, you know, some easy store-bought things that you can use to treat pain and inflammation. Another issue that a lot of times people who are in recovery deal with are withdrawal symptoms. And I read an article. Did you guys read this article yesterday? Oh geez, I'm forgetting the name of the, you know, we've talked a lot about how, not here, but people talk a lot about how dangerous opiates are now, because fentanyl is laced into almost all opiates on the street now. But now they're lacing them with something else. I can't remember the name of it, but it's especially bad a little further south, like in Missouri, and even up, they were talking about the issue up in Pittsburgh. And one of the ladies in the article I was reading said that when she would try to get clean off of opiates, she would be very, very sick with withdrawal symptoms for about 5 or 6 days. But with this new compound, it's a veterinary drug that they're adding to it, that's used for animals. She said with that, her withdrawal symptoms lasted 21 days. And, you know, just like talking to my brother, one of the reasons why he would go back to using, why his recovery faltered so many times, was because of those withdrawal symptoms. He said that the pain, the sickness, the nausea was so excruciating that it would trigger him back into using. He just couldn't handle it.
Linda? Is she frozen for everybody or just me? Oh.
Think it's so crazy, right? Because we all think of dandelion as being this weed that just kind of grows in people's yards and lawns and out of the cracks of the sidewalk. We walk over it every day and we ignore it. But you guys, there's amazing research being done on the use of dandelion root to treat cancer, different types of cancer, to treat diabetes and help heal the pancreas. And we already know tons of research has been done on the use of dandelion root to heal the liver in particular. So if you have issues with cirrhosis, if you have issues with fatty liver disease, dandelion root should be something that you make a part of your everyday life, at least for a while, for a couple of months. But if you are someone who's in recovery, it is so good. This was dandelion root tea was really one of the things that helped my brother and so many other people that I've worked with through withdrawal symptoms. I'll give me 1 second, Natasha. If I don't answer, if I don't say this, I'll forget. So if you're looking for dandelion root, yes, you can harvest them from your yard, and then you just wash the roots really well, and you can like let them dry out on paper towels on your kitchen table until they're like really dry. Or you can buy dandelion root online. I know that sounds weird because you're like buying this thing that people spray from their yards all the time that you don't think should cost money. And I get that. But if you aren't someone who has access to a lot of dandelions, or you just don't feel confident in harvesting them yourself, you can actually buy dandelion root tea at Walmart now in boxes. Okay. Natasha, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, that was just my question because here in Minnesota, like with the snow falling and stuff, I was just wondering where we would go about getting the dandelion root. And I was also wondering if like, because right now I'm going through the process of trying to taper off of benzodiazepines that I was using for anxiety. So this is something that could help me through that process?
Definitely. And I'll get to more like for more of these withdrawal symptoms. There's more than just dandelion. So yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Thank you for sharing that. Dandelion root, absolutely. Like here in North Dakota, we just got like 2.5 feet of snow the other day, and we're in for more tomorrow. So the ground is too frozen. If I didn't have dried dandelion root already, and just so you guys know, like people around here use this so much that I probably have about 15 pounds of dandelion root on hand at any time, because people need it so much, whether it's for their liver or if it's for withdrawal symptoms. So you can also buy, like if you Google powdered dandelion root, you can buy dandelion root powder online and make tea with that as well. There is an indigenous vendor for herbs, and her name is Anne White Hat. She's a Sicangu Lakota herbalist who lives down in New Orleans. And I'm happy to type that up later. Or if you have any questions on where to access stuff, let me know, and I can just contact me on Facebook, and I'll send you that information. Always, you guys, so happy to share. Okay. And if I don't get back to you right away, it's just because your message went to my spam, but eventually I'll check it. So there are ways to access dandelion even now in the winter. Another one that is very common up there by Bois Forte is burdock root. This is like a plant that looks like a dinosaur plant. If you've ever seen a plant growing down like near the trees and stuff, you can see this is like at the base of some shrubs, and it has leaves this big, you guys, like dinosaur leaves, right? They get huge. If you've ever seen that, that's probably burdock. Okay, so burdock is an amazing plant. The root of it is a delicacy in soups and stuff in Japan and China and Korea. I grew up eating burdock root in salads and things like that. Because the fact is, bitter things are very good for you. So if you're afraid of bitter foods, one thing that you can try to do as you try to wean yourself off of any substance, even if it's sugar, you guys, even if you're just here to recover from the effects of sugar, which is real, and don't let anyone tell you it's not. The number one symptom of sugar withdrawal is crying. And you can't tell me that that's okay. All right. So, but eating and drinking bitter things like dandelion root and burdock root is absolutely amazing when it comes to helping with the shakes, helping with anxiety and heart palpitations, and just that feeling that your heart is beating so fast. When you eat bitter things, it actually is, and drink bitter things, it's actually very calming, and it helps you take a deep breath, and you're like, okay, I got this, I can handle this, you know? So, and at the same time, the cool thing about it is that at the same time that it's calming you, it's also helping to heal your liver, your kidneys, your pancreas, okay? Amazing stuff. So you can go out there, you can get both of these wild, or you can order them online. Another company, so I love supporting Indigenous owned businesses, but Ann Whitehat's company, her shop down in New Orleans may not have it in stock. And if they don't, I do order stuff from Mountain Rose Herbs as well, okay? Another plant in Ojibwe, this one has such a beautiful Ojibwe name. It's Ajitamuazo, which means squirrel tail. And do you see the leaf here? Do you see why it's called squirrel tail? Looks like a bushy squirrel tail, right? And so this is such a beautiful plant that grows, it more grows in like the open meadows. You won't find it so much in the woods. You'll find it more like in those open meadows and spaces like that. And it's not, you gotta be able to identify this one correctly. When you smell it, it has a smell that's almost minty, has kind of a strange smell, but it grows all over the place, and it has that bushy squirrel's tail. So if it looks kind of like this, but it has a flat, broad, shiny leaf, it's not yarrow. Okay? I'm going to repeat that. If you find something with a white flower that kind of looks like this, but the leaf doesn't look like a bushy squirrel tail, instead it looks like a flat, shiny, almost like a flat, shiny carrot leaf, that is not yarrow, okay? So you want to look for that bushy squirrel tail. If you think you found yarrow, but you're unsure, snap a photo with your camera and send it to me on Facebook Messenger, and I will identify it 100% for you, okay? So this is another one. Oh my gosh, you guys, so wonderful for healing. So first of all, if like maybe your drug of choice, if any of you were doing that, maybe you even just smoke tobacco and you're trying to stop smoking tobacco. Tobacco and other substances that are taken into the lungs will do some heavy damage to your lungs. So maybe you're someone who has some lung damage and you don't breathe very well, or heck, maybe you just had COVID, you know, and the COVID did some damage to your lungs and you're still tired all the time and you can't take a deep breath. Yarrow is the plant for you, okay? It is amazing for healing the breathing passages and blood vessels in the lungs to help you breathe better. It is also wonderful for helping with withdrawal symptoms. It's very cleansing. So one of the teas, the very first tea blend that I gave my brother and that I give everyone ever since, I've worked with probably upwards of 150, 200 people since I initially started working with my brother all those years ago. I mixed together dandelion root, burdock root, and yarrow. These 3 plants that I've talked about for withdrawal symptoms. This was the first tea blend I gave him, and this is really what helped him through that withdrawal period. Okay, it just helps to, I will tell you guys that he peed a lot, like a lot, because what will happen is this tea blend will basically help to cleanse your body of all of these, you know, toxins that you've been taking in, and, you know, all this stuff that you've been taking in, and you'll pee it out. And so what you want to do so you don't get dehydrated is make sure that you're also drinking lots of good fresh water. Okay. But these 3 plants that I've just talked about work very, very well together. More herbs for withdrawal symptoms, things that you might have more access to. This list here, any type of mint. Even if you just go to the grocery store and you get a box of mint tea, that's going to help. Okay. If you don't have access to those other ones and you don't have, you know, time or money to order them online, you can go to the grocery store and buy a $4 box of mint tea bags. Okay. And that will help. The anise hyssop is the one that grows out there. The leaves taste and smell like a black jelly bean. You guys remember that one? Kind of like black licorice. It grows all over the place up there. That one's available online as well. It's amazing for healing the lungs, and it's amazing for withdrawal. Motherwort. Okay, I'm sorry. I should be pointing these out. This is mint. This is like peppermint or spearmint. And then this one up here is the anise hyssop. This is the one that tastes like a black jelly bean. It's the weirdest thing, because if you've never tried this and you take one of the leaves, the purple flower up here, you take one of these leaves and you smell it or taste it, tastes exactly like a black jelly bean. And I can see some of you that have your camera on going, ew. And that's totally fine. A lot of people don't like black jelly beans. You don't have to use that one. And then this one down in the bottom right-hand corner, that's motherwort. That grows all over up there as well. And this one is great for the withdrawal symptoms that really have high anxiety. Okay. Motherwort, the reason it's called motherwort is because it's also used for postpartum depression and anxiety. Okay. But it's used for anxiety for everyone, men, women, you know, postpartum, you know, you can use it for, recovery. It's amazing. So motherwort is one of those things. I will send this PowerPoint to Peyton. And then if anyone wants it, you can ask her for it. Okay. And then I also wanted to say that if you don't have access to any of these and you just want to go to the grocery store and pick up some rosemary, oregano, ginger root, fennel, all of those are available in the store. And they are wonderful for withdrawal symptoms as well. Okay. Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot here. So I want to try to get through this for you guys. So my brother's biggest trigger is anxiety. If my mom gets mad at him, I mean, he is older than me. And to this day, if my mom gets mad at him, he will get really anxious and he'll be triggered to start using. Anxiety is a huge trigger for him. Okay. Depression is a big trigger for a lot of people. This blue vervain is absolutely one of my favorite plants for helping with anxiety and depression. Blue vervain loves to grow in the woods and open meadows. And I really find it a lot in like that low part right next to streams and ponds and lakes. Okay. It loves to grow kind of near water. And this is one of those plants. Oh, I gotta tell you guys, it is totally safe, even for little kids. I've given blue vervain tea to 4-year-olds before, particularly for anxiety and depression, but also for ADD and ADHD. It's very calming. Okay. And so all you do is you make a tea. out of the leaves and the flowers up at the top. And you want to get it when it's in bloom, like in these pictures. Okay. Did someone have a question? Did I hear someone with a question?
Linda,
Yep.
hi. This is Linda Tibbetts Bardo. How are you?
Hi, good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. It's been a while. But
Yep.
my question is, with these different plants and things that you're sharing with us, are you going to also share the recipe for making those teas?
I sure can. I will tell you guys that I pretty much use a standard tea recipe. And that is about, so if you talk to some people, they like most herbalists, they'll tell you that the standard tea recipe is about 1.5 teaspoons or 2 teaspoons of whatever plants you're using, a total of 2 teaspoons in 2 cups of really hot water. And you let that sit for about 10 to 15 minutes and you can drink that twice a day. Now I'm going to repeat that. 2 teaspoons of your herbs in 2 cups of really hot water for 10 to 15 minutes. And then you can drink that 2 to 3 times a day. And I'm happy to, Peyton, if you want to maybe put that in the chat, or I can also put it in the chat later.
I
or
can
I'm
do
happy
that.
to send you guys recipes and stuff too.
Yep, I can do that.
Me good.
No problem. So this is one, this plant though is super safe, even for young people. Like I said, it's even a plant that's used for people who are on the autism spectrum and the Asperger spectrum. It's just very calming. And also I gotta say that, like, if I'm ever just, even me, if I'm just ever feeling off center, do you know what I mean when I say off center? I'm just feeling out of balance. I'm just feeling like I can't handle what's going on. And like, you know, I get really anxious about stuff. I drink this tea and the way that I feel, it's like, it just helps to bring me back to the center. And I know I'm going to be able to handle whatever it is. Darla, did you have a question?
Many, but I'm trying to jot down everything.
No problem. If you
yeah,
have a question.
Yeah, question would be, I'm glad you could hear me because I wasn't sure. I didn't know how to work this thing, but now that you could hear me, it's good. Sinuses, I always wonder about sinus problems and gallbladder. You know, I don't know if it's my liver or gallbladder, and it's from food, and you know what I mean, bad food, eating bad food. And then my sinuses too. I think that since I've been trying to change my diet, my sinus problem's been kind of going down. I don't know what's going on.
So we talked about that a little bit today. I did a talk for up there today during the it was like a health and wellness thing today up there at Wasteport. I did it over Zoom, but there are a lot of plants for sinus issues, like to help clear out the sinuses. And it's like, you know, it's really important to stay hydrated, first of all. So I don't know how much water you drink, but you should drink. Yeah, I saw that look. Lots and lots of fluid is very important. Otherwise, the mucus that's in your lungs and in your sinuses will just kind of sit there. And then bacteria builds up and you get a sinus infection. And then also, do you eat spicy food ever? Because hot sauce and spicy stuff will actually help to thin up the stuff that's in your sinuses as well. But yeah, I can definitely, let me go more on with this one and we'll talk more about that because it's important. It's really important. And diet has everything to do with sinus health, with all of this. So another plant that I use for anxiety and depression, and this actually grows further south of you guys, but you can find it online. You can totally access this, like if you go visit some friends a little further south, maybe you go visit your Anishinaabe relatives, your Prairie Potawatomi relatives. This is called passion flower. And look at that flower. It is so crazy looking and beautiful. But I don't know if any of you guys have ever eaten a passion fruit before. They are so delicious and they grow on a vine like down. I find them a lot in Missouri and places like that. But this is, I don't remember the Ojibwe name, but there is an Ojibwe name for this plant. So I know you guys had access to it. If you don't want to order it online and you can't get down south to harvest some, you can grow this up there. You can grow it in your garden. And it will grow. It's a big, beautiful vine that gets these fruit on it. And that fruit is so delicious. But what I really do is I take the leaves and the stems and I make tea out of them. And you guys, in numerous addiction programs all across the world, they are starting to use passion flower to treat withdrawal symptoms, anxiety, depression, the shakes. This is just an amazing medicine for those aspects of addiction. So people who are in recovery are using lots and lots of passion flower these days, and I highly recommend it. Another one is skullcap. This one does grow up there. It almost looks like mint, but it's not mint. This is another one you can buy online as well. And it's wonderful. Like anytime I'm feeling like, you know, really sad about something, like I talked to a lady who, you know, unfortunately there's so much loss in Indigenous communities. And I was talking to a lady just the other day who said that every time I get on social media and I see about another person we've lost, she said, I feel like going straight out and using. That's what she said to me. And I really feel like skullcap, this plant right here, is an amazing plant for those who are in mourning in particular. If you know someone who is sad or anxious because of that loss, drinking this as a tea or even using the tincture, or you can even, you know, I've seen people make syrup with it, is wonderful for helping with that. Okay. Another issue we had when my brother was in recovery, and with everyone else I've worked with and with many other people, these days it is so hard to get a good night's sleep, isn't it? Like whether you, you know, whether it's because of school or because of work or because of your kids or because of your partner or because of your parents, like it is hard. Like I'll be getting ready to fall asleep and all of a sudden I'll start thinking like, oh man, I totally forgot to do that today. And then I'll like obsess over it. And it'll take me forever to get to sleep. This is a plant that grows all over Minnesota. It's called valerian. The roots there are what's used for tea, but I have to tell you guys something before you consider using valerian. I have to tell you two things. Number one, this plant has the worst smell of any plant that I've ever worked with. And okay, so just a quick thing. I had a bag of valerian in the back of my car, and I was going somewhere and I threw a ribbon skirt on top of that bag. That was like 8 years ago, and the skirt still stinks like valerian, even though I've probably washed it like 50 or 60 times since then. Okay, so I'm just warning you now that it has a strong smell, but it is a very effective sleep aid. I mean, like, you know, this is probably the one that people use most commonly for sleep. You can get it in stores. If you're a 10 p.m. coffee drinker and you like to have a cup of coffee like at 9 o'clock at night and then you're up for hours afterwards, they actually make decaffeinated coffee with valerian in it now to put you to sleep. So one thing I found, this is number two. The one thing I found is that if you use valerian too long, it stops working. Okay, so if you use it for a couple weeks and it stops working, like you'll be like, oh God, it's not working anymore. So what you need to do is go off of it for at least a week. And then you can go back on it for a week. So I always recommend use it for a week, stop using it for a week. Use it for a week, stop using it for a week. And that way it'll maintain its strength. Another one of my favorites, it also grows up there, is hops. Hops is the stuff that people use. You guys might recognize the name, like, because they use it to brew bitter beer. But there's no alcohol or any weird compounds in hops. It's just that people like the flavor historically, even though it's very, very bitter. But hops tea is wonderful for helping with sleep. Every once in a while, like if my brother starts to have anxiety, I will make him a tea with the blue vervain, the valerian, and the hops, all three of those. Remember the blue vervain from a little bit ago that helps to bring you back to the center? With the valerian and the hops. That's when he has like some severe, like, you know, he calls me and he's like, sis, I've been up for 36 hours. I'll be like, okay, this is what you need to do. And it's the blue vervain, valerian, and hops. So for severe sleep issues. And then he's able to use it and get back on a better sleep cycle.
Sorry for
Hops?
interrupting you.
Oh no, it's okay. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so whenever you're saying the blue vervain, valerian and hops, so whenever you're doing the mixture teas, is it the same standard tea recipe, or do you add 2 teaspoons of each herb into that tea? Does that make sense?
Great question. Yes, sorry, I meant to address that earlier and I forgot. So feel free, everyone, to remind me if I forget to address things. So what I do is, and I have my desk behind me so you guys can't see it, but around the corner from my desk, I have a shelf full of jars of herbs and tea blends, okay? And with most of the ones I'm talking about today, unless I say otherwise, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So in that jar, I'll put like 1 cup of hops, 1 cup of valerian, and 1 cup of blue vervain. Then I'll shake it up and mix it all together. And then when it's time to make the tea, that's when I take out my 2 teaspoons of that blend. Does that make sense? Do you want me to repeat? Okay. Yeah, it's just equal parts of each plant. And then you take the 2 teaspoons out of that whole blend. Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about food, because good food is so important for recovery. I don't know about any of you guys or if you've experienced this before, but with everyone I've ever worked with, who was experiencing addiction and trying to like move themselves into recovery, they turned to something else. They basically replaced their addiction with like potato chips or with sugar, right? Salt or sugar mostly. And with my brother, it was sugar. He didn't even eat when we were trying to help him through recovery and help him through with those withdrawal symptoms. He didn't eat at all. And then when he started eating again, it was candy bars and soda. And, you know, he just really wanted sugar all the time. The problem with that is that sugar does more damage to those organs, to those systems that are already damaged by the opiates he was using. And it doesn't matter if it's, I mean, it does, but whether it's alcohol or opiates or methamphetamine, right? You have done damage to multiple body systems, to your respiratory system, like your lungs. You've done damage to your liver and kidneys. You've done damage to your digestive system. We can help to heal those, but you got to use the food and the medicine as well. If you have done damage to those systems and you're just like eating a bunch of really crappy food now, then that you're not going to heal. Your body isn't going to heal. Okay. So, you know, it's important to try to get good nutrition. I know that's so hard. I know it's so much easier said than done, but even if you can just start to get on that better road, it's going to really help. Poor nutrition makes recovery more difficult. Okay. Just a couple more things, kind of reiterating that. When you use certain substances, certain drugs, you consume less food, right? So like my brother went down to like 110 pounds at one point. You eat less healthy foods. You, and like a lot of those substances will increase your metabolism temporarily and then lead to like a severe depressive state. So you're burning all of the energy you're getting, and your body's not even able to absorb nutrients, right? Because you have drug use can lead to a lot of diarrhea, a lot of vomiting. Plus it damages the lining of your intestines, where a lot of nutrients are usually absorbed, and it prevents absorption. So you literally, excuse my phrase, but you poop it all out. All those nutrients that you should be soaking up to help to heal your body, you're pooping them all out when you're using. And so they're not getting soaked up by your body. So when you start eating good, healthy food again, you know, it helps to repair those systems. When I say you damage your gut so that it can't absorb nutrients properly, what I mean is your gut, like the stuff, there's little critters in everyone's stomach and intestine that helps us absorb nutrients. It breaks stuff down, right? It like basically eats the stuff. There's like little gut microbiome, they call it, bacteria and stuff that helps to break it down. But you kill all those. Number one, with salt. Number one, too much salt. Number one, with too much sugar. And number three, any of those, like alcohol kills your gut microbiome, you know, and opiates, methamphetamine, all of those kill your gut microbiome. So you need to try to replenish that. It's so, so important for recovery. When you're on your journey, you want to try really hard. I hope that, like, if you guys are on this journey, even if it's from, you know, tobacco or sugar or whatever, if it's from opiates, if it's from alcohol, I hope you like snap a picture of this slide because limiting the amount of processed foods you eat is so important. And I know it's hard. When I say white foods, I don't mean like a culture, like white culture. I mean white colored foods, like white sugar, white flour, white rice, white potatoes, dairy, you know, like milk. Limiting those things while you're in recovery is really important. Okay. Those things raise your blood sugar. They damage your gut microbiome. They make it hard for you to eat other good foods because they fill you up. Okay. So limit those, increase your protein, you know, eat all of your beautiful fish that you guys have up there. Your, oh gosh, wawashkeishi. I remembered it. Eat your wawashkeishi, eat your fish, you know, eat all of those beautiful Ojibwe foods, and, you know, and all of your indigenous vegetables, your wild rice, which is so high in beautiful fiber and protein. Eat your berries, you guys. Your delicious, beautiful berries, like your blueberries and your raspberries. Oh my gosh, the blackberries up there. Oh my gosh. Like all of that is gonna heal you. And it's not just gonna heal you physically, it is gonna heal your spirit. It is gonna make you less depressed. It's gonna help to like heal your brain, like your brain tissues, literally. When I say, I don't mean that's gonna like heal your brain, you know, it is gonna literally heal your brain tissues and help to regenerate brain cells. Okay, all of these good foods will do that. Fiber, calcium, B vitamins. like something, and this was so important for my brother. When he was in active addiction, imagine this, you guys. He spent like 16 or 17 years pretty much inside all the time. He never went outside. He never went hiking. He never went walking. You know, he spent most of his time inside. So he was not getting any vitamin D. Vitamin D, our body processes sunlight into an essential vitamin known as vitamin D. Okay. So if you are someone who does not get outside enough, especially this time of year when it's super cold and cloudy, take a vitamin D3 supplement. If you've noticed that you're getting sick a lot more, okay, even if, you know, this, like, you're only here to tell your cousin about the recovery diet. You don't have any issues with it, right? If you're that person, but you notice that you've been catching more colds, it means your immune system is shot. And that can be because of all kinds of things. Start taking a vitamin D3 supplement, okay? And make sure it says vitamin D3, not just vitamin D, because that's more soluble by your body, okay? And then again, like I was telling Darla earlier, stay hydrated. It is so important to be drinking your water, fresh water all the time, okay? One thing we do in an easy way, every single one of these pictures was food that I cooked myself, except for this wild rice and berry bowl. I don't know why, but I could not find a good picture of wild rice and berries. I don't know, because we eat it all the time, but I couldn't find one. I know I'm going overtime and I'm sorry. I think was I supposed to stop at 6, Peyton?
No, I was scheduled for 7, but you like
Okay.
whenever you feel comfortable stopping.
Okay, so let me just get through these last 2 things. You guys bear with me. I'm sorry. I know it's a lot of time to sit on Zoom, but you know, I am not by any means perfect. I freaking love bacon. Okay, I love bacon. Like, I have a relationship with bacon practically. I love it. I love commodities. You know, do you guys call it the brick of gold up there too? Like, I love commodity cheese so much. And then I love brownies. Like, those are my 3 things I always talk about. Like, if, you know, zombie apocalypse, like you know, those are the 3 things I want to keep, you know? But the reason I can eat those things in moderation is because the food that you see here, this is the way that, like, we eat in my family pretty much all the time. And so, you know, we eat like tons and tons of vegetables, and we eat tons of medicine. So like this stew right here, okay, in the middle, this is a wild plant called peppergrass. There's nettles in there. There's onions, wild onions, like the jagaguage are in there. You know, there's mondamin in there. You know, mondamin, like real Ojibwe corn that's been turned into hominy. That's medicine. That's really good for our bodies. Not the yellow sweet can from a corn, sweet corn from a can. Sorry so much. But like the real, like, you know, Ojibwe corn is like really good medicine for our bodies. But you know, there's chilies in that soup. Like, all of these have beautiful medicine in them, as well as things that we normally consider food. You know, all of those plants that I talked about today, there's even like, you know, in the wild rice bowls we eat, we put all those berries, plus we put rose hips, you know, the berries that grow off the rose bush. We take out the seeds and we put those in our wild rice bowls. I mean, we eat lots and lots of veggies because food is medicine. And these, you know, eating like medicine bowls, like whether it's a wild rice bowl or a soup bowl or a rice bowl, you know, or, you know, a chili bowl or whatever, like those are opportunities to get more and more medicine into your everyday lives. Oregano, rosemary, those things are all medicinal. You know, I even put blue vervain in soups because my kids, if they start feeling anxious, we've been inside all winter long, they're like, oh my God, I need to get outside. We still do get outside in the winter to try to like ice fish and things like that. But I will also put some blue vervain into their soups. They don't even know it's in there. Mushroom powders like chaga and all of that, I put those in there. They don't even know they're in there because you can't taste powdered mushrooms once it's mixed in with all those broths, okay? I wanted to like show you guys a couple, these are some of the bone broths, like the medicinal broths that we make that we use for our soups. You guys might recognize the bee balm that's on here. There's the dark stuff is mushroom powder. We put chili peppers, bay leaves, onions, garlic, ginger, turmeric. We use maple vinegar. I don't know how many of you guys know Jerry Gendreau and Katie up at Dynamite Hill Farms, but they make their own maple vinegar, and it's beautiful stuff, good medicine. A little bit of vinegar in your broths, you won't taste it, but it helps to break down the plants in there and the bones so that you're able to absorb more nutrients. So with all of your soups, just put a little bit of stuff in there, a little bit of vinegar in there. Okay. All right. So that's all I have for you guys today. I
have a question.
Yes,
I have a
please.
question. Apple cider vinegar, the mother or whatever. So and it's like recommended to like drink a little bit in the morning to like gut health and all that stuff. So is that something that you would support?
Totally. I actually, at this point in my life, prefer maple vinegar because number one, because it's totally indigenous. But I like the taste of it too, because it kind of tastes like maple and vinegar. So it's like sweeter, but I do love apple cider vinegar. And I use apple cider vinegar too, probably almost every day. My mother-in-law does not like maple vinegar. So she actually mixes a little bit of apple cider vinegar with some other things in the morning, including soda water. And she drinks it. She just downs it. And that's like her elixir for the day. And it has helped her so much. But vinegar really is as good as they say, because we've done a lot of damage. Even those of us who have not experienced addiction, we've done so much damage to our gut with other addictions like salt and sugar and processed foods. Fried foods are a big weakness for me. And so we've done so much damage. So every single day, I try to have a little bit of vinegar in whether it's in salad dressing, whether I put some in my soups, whether I drink it straight up by the spoonful. I try to have some vinegar every day. Or if I don't have vinegar, if I'm not using vinegar, I try to use some type of fermented vegetable every day, like kimchi or sauerkraut. And those are so good for repairing our gut. And then I see a question here. Does it matter how these plants are ground up, like mortar and pestle, or can you use a coffee grinder? I use a so I'm a big fan of easy and making things as simple as possible. And so do you guys still eat pemmican? Do any of you guys still eat pemmican? Pemmican is like the ground up meat with the berries and the fat. Out here, we call it wasna, okay? So my husband made 100 servings of that yesterday for a ceremony. And because he was making it for ceremony, it was very important to him to use his stone mortar and pestle, like the old school way. He felt like that was part of his sacrifice for that food, right? And that he was putting his heart and love into it. It took him 12 hours, by the way, but he felt really good about doing that. But like, if it's just like for a snack or something, you can sure as heck bet I'm going to be using my food processor, my Cuisinart. So it matters if it matters to you, I guess, is what I would say. But so there are some foods, for example, that my mom believes should never touch metal. right? She even cooks them in like glass, or she cooks them in enamel. She never cooks them like directly in metal. And so if you have some of like that, or if you've been taught that, I would say follow those. But for most plants, that in my experience, it doesn't affect how effective they are.
I've got a question, Linda.
Yep.
So do you need to dry the leaves before making the tea? And like, how long do you keep the tea ingredients, or like how long is dried leaves and stuff?
Great question. So, okay, so first let me say that after you make tea, like let's say you boil it up and you have it in a jar or a pitcher or in a thermos, you need to drink that tea. So if it's kept in a fridge, you can keep it in the fridge for 3 days maximum. Okay. And like I had an elder tell me once, like, do you remember that tea you made for me 4 years ago? I still have some in the fridge in a jar. And by then, like, you know, I have no idea what's growing in there. And so I told him, of course, no, don't drink that when it's 4 years old. Drink any tea you make needs to be consumed within 3 days. Tea blends that you like have on the shelf dry, like the dry tea blends, if you keep them out of the sunlight, they'll usually last for a year or two. You can get them to last for a year or two. And then what was I feel like you asked another question.
So like, let's say somebody goes out and they harvest dandelion leaves, or they go out and harvest something. What is the drying process, and like, how long does that take?
Okay, so yep, that's a great question. So it varies from plant to plant, and it varies. Like dandelion leaves dry a lot faster than dandelion roots. Okay, so here in the Dakotas, what I do is I just like, and you guys, you know, I cleaned my desk for you guys before I did this presentation, but normally you'll see that I have plants drying on every single flat surface in my house, in my office, everywhere. Because I just lay them out on cookie sheets or paper towels and let them air dry, right? That is totally fine. And you can do that there as well, especially this time of year when the air is so dry, that winter air. But in the summer and things like that, you can still air dry things, just hang them up or lay them out on a cookie sheet with a paper towel and let them dry, let them air dry. And you want to do it until they're basically crunchy, right? You don't want them to be rubbery because they'll mold. That means there's still moisture in there. You want them to, like if it's a root, like a dandelion root, when you break it, you want it to snap, right? And that's how you know it's fully dry. You can use a dehydrator as well. Like if you guys want to invest in a dehydrator, you can buy a round Presto is the brand name dehydrator from Walmart for about $40. It's a really good investment because you can dry anything in there, all your berries, all your medicines, everything. And it's a good investment to make. But you don't have to. You don't have to do that. But I will tell you that when you dry things air dried, just setting them outside, it could take sometimes 5 to 7 days for them to dry. Whereas when you put them in the dehydrator, it's like 6 hours. So it's a lot faster.
And when you're making like teas, does the leaves or the things need to be dried out before you make the tea?
Oh, that's right. That was the question. So you can absolutely make tea from fresh plants, from fresh picked plants. Okay. A lot of times you'll want to add more of the plant because fresh plants are not as strong as dried plants. So if you're going to use fresh plants, I would probably use 3 teaspoons instead of 2. Any other questions?
One more. Is there, then, once you dry it and you have it like dried, is there a time limit of like if you leave it in there for 10 years? And you have
No,
these-
it's
okay.
usually about 2 years, 1 to 2, and it needs to be kept out of the sunlight because sunlight will degrade your herbs. So,
And what about like certain medicines you're not supposed to put in plastic? So everything that you harvest and for medicines, you should put it in not plastic.
So there are like, if I'm traveling with something, I'll put it in a plastic bag, because I can't fly with glass jars. But like, if you ever see my house or anything, I have most of my medicines in glass jars. But yeah, I'll put it in plastic bags temporarily. I just try not to do that long term. So I had another question come in. Can you make medicines too strong, where it can be fatal, or where it even just causes something like diarrhea or a stomach ache? It's a great question. So the plants that I've talked about today are exceedingly safe. And you know, anything is toxic if you use too much of it, right? You can have a problem by drinking too much water. That really can become a problem, right? But that said, with plant medicines, it's a lot less likely for you to hurt yourself than it is with pills. Pills are super duper strong, and teas are not quite as strong. Now that said, I know you guys love your swamp tea, right? Swamp tea is so amazing. It's one of my favorites. But did you guys know that if you boil swamp tea in a metal pot and then put a cover on and let it sit for more than like 6 hours, it actually will develop some toxic compounds? I just found that out. Google it. There's really good papers on it. I think you'd have to like drink a ton of it to hurt yourself, but it's still interesting. And it was given to me, that paper was given to me by an Ojibwe friend, who was like, man, I've been like boiling swamp tea in metal and just leaving it on the stove for like, you know, and they'd say they would reboil it a couple times a day, you know. So they said, but look at this. And so it was an interesting study done on, you know, how swamp tea reacts with metal. So to further answer the question, that's why we say 2 to 3 cups of the tea 3 times a day. And if you want a copy of that article, send me, Facebook me your email and I'll totally email it to you.
I got
The
another.
article on the swamp tea.
Oh, okay. I'll follow up with you about all this. Do it.
I'm sorry?
I said we can follow up after, and then I can get this stuff on email, and then
Oh yeah.
on the Facebook. I've got another question. If I put it in plastic bags, do I need to poke a hole? I was told before I need to put a hole in plastic bags for medicines.
When you mean if they're dried already?
They didn't mention.
Okay, so I will say like when I'm storing fruit like berries, or when I'm storing dried meat, I actually use cloth like pillowcases, because I like the breathability. But when I'm storing herbs, I have like definitely stored them in plastic bags before. They get shipped to me in plastic bags often. It's just that I personally try to reduce the amount of plastic I use in general. And so I very much recommend using, not using plastic. You know what I mean? Sorry, I'm taking a picture of someone's email address here. Okay.
I will say that, like, I know that there was an elder on Boys Fort Res who had mentioned something like that. So if that's the teaching that you received and you feel like that's the teaching that speaks to you, then if you feel like you should follow that, then follow that.
That's absolutely, yes. So let me, like, just speaking to that a little more. What I always say too, like even with protocols, because I know most of you guys know this and don't need me to say this, especially as someone who's not from there. But I always say, follow the protocols of the people who came before you, the people who taught you. Because I live on my husband's homelands, I follow Lakota protocols when I harvest plants, the offerings that I make, the prayers, even the songs that I sing, in honor of my husband and my children. When I'm up there on your homelands, I follow my friends, my Ojibwe friends and relatives protocols. I offer my tobacco, my asema, just like they taught me, and to honor them on your homelands. And so you know, that's what I would say. Follow the protocols that came, you know, of the people who came before you and the way that you were taught.
So I have another,
Absolutely.
great call, Linda. I have another question that says, do you have to worry about teas interacting with your medicines received from clinics? Should you check with your doctor before using?
Excellent idea. So, and great question. So what I always say is, you know, I never advise someone like quit taking something or whatever without talking to their doctor first. That's super important. And you can advise them of everything that you're doing. However, if you are interested in counterindications or contraindications for your medicines, you can go on to WebMD. Now, keep in mind, okay, if you go onto WebMD and you go online and you look up like how plants react with different things, they pretty much say everything is poisonous. No lie. If you go online right now and you look up choke cherries, some of you guys, like probably most of you have eaten choke cherries in your life. They will say choke cherries are poisonous. Most indigenous foods online, if you look them up in indigenous medicines, they'll say they're poisonous. Okay. So you have to like think about like what your elders have taught you and stuff that you've learned from people you trust. Making your doctors aware of what you're doing is always a good idea. But you know, and like, especially if you're pregnant, or nursing, you know, talk to someone who maybe is a doula or a midwife who specializes in those things as well. But it's important to realize too, I'm just going to say this. Our fear of traditional medicine and our fear of traditional food is intentional because they don't make money off of food and medicine. We gather ourselves and we make ourselves. So being afraid, while it's natural because it's been ingrained into our heads forever, it is intentional. And so I really encourage you, learn, and talk to people.
Love that.
One last question. So I actually probably do need to go. I'm supposed to be in another workshop too. I for some reason I thought this one just went till 6, but I've been super happy to spend extra time with you guys. But there is one more question. Someone's asking if stinging nettles feel similar to a bee sting. I've been stung by bees many times, and for me, they're very painful and they get itchy and all of that stuff. To me, stinging nettles feels almost like I've accidentally, I don't know. Maybe like I've touched a rose, like the thorns on a rose, and like, ouch, you know. But it, like I said, goes away very quickly. Usually only lasts about 10 to 15 minutes.
Well, Linda, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. You've been super knowledgeable. I appreciate your time, your knowledge, and everything, and sharing that with us. Anybody has any other questions or has any information they want, they can direct those to me or add Linda on Facebook, like she mentioned. And I will be sharing the recording of this video on our YouTube page and on our Facebook page, the Voice for Cultural Healing. So, yeah.
Awesome. Miigwech, everybody, for coming. I have had so much fun being here and talking to you guys. Gigawabaman.
Gigawabaman.